So anybody else have an answer for what does it look like when hyper-Bitcoinization occurs?
I can answer that.
Anybody want to answer that?
I can answer it. Tone, I can answer it.
Oh, you got a mic already.
Yeah, so it looks like a patchwork of city-states run by CEO kings, basically. Seriously, there is absolutely no way a nation-state can remain profitable against the specter of economic reality. So the larger you get, the more expensive it becomes to maintain, protect, and operate a territory. So there's a natural, organic economic limit to that. And then what happens is you get this whole patchwork of different city-states which might form alliances, which might want to do things, together, etc. But it's a completely different world. Like the idea when you were asking the boys earlier, it's like the next era. What nations or what countries become like, the leading? None of them. There's no such thing as fucking countries anymore. Like everything breaks down to states because you can't run a country economically on a Bitcoin standard.
And the thing is, you see a world that's much more economically, let's say, distributed to the value that an individual provides to the economy. Right now, what happens with the Federal Reserve, and when you look at throughout history at every single evil thing that's happened, what's been present is counterfeit money. And whether that counterfeit money is fake dollar bills or us off the gold standard and the Federal Reserve printing money and being able to pass it out to their friends first, that system, that knee that's bent that Giacomo was talking about earlier, there is no need to bend. So it's a system that you're going to see, like, there are always going to be winners and losers. You are always going to be rewarded on how hard you work, but the extent of how equally distributed that is in comparison to the work that you input is going to be much more pure.
Yeah, it'll normalize. There's one thing I want to add is that everyone talks about separation of money and state, and recently I had this epiphany, which is Bitcoin actually creates the separation of economics and politics, because right now we live squarely in the realm of politics and we think like left and right is what matters and all this fucking horse shit, but basically economics lives in a different realm outside of the political realm. And what's happened in the past is that politics influences economics then influences politics, and you get this kind of concentration effect. Bitcoin severs that link and basically makes kind of it fixes economic laws, and then politics just kind of pendulums around it. So people can have different politics, but what they can't do is they can't use their politics to gain an unfair advantage economically. And that's something that's never happened before.
So I have a question for the miners before we turn it over to the audience. Okay, I know that there's statistics that say that, we left China. We all saw those videos of that steamroller crushing all those miners in Taiwan. How do we know where mining power has come from? Like, where does that metric come from to the miners?
Sure, happy to answer that question. Really mining is something that has not been very transparent as an industry over time. The part of the appeal of having non-KYC Bitcoin is not advertising, where your mining operations are and where you're getting everything. There is a risk there just by advertising your location. So in order to get that kind of data, you have to have voluntary compliance and voluntary submissions and very little ability to verify that. What you can see it is at the pool level. Pool levels can track IPs. IPs can be redirected and that sort of thing. But the pool level is really the only place where you could gather that data on where countries are and how much share of the mining network they have.
Oh, it's a black. No, there should be a silver there. Oh, you want to turn it on?
That's my fault. Just give me 1 second.
Oh, it's turned on.
Go ahead. It's good now.
It's good now.
Test? Okay.
Yes,
Now it is.
yes.
Okay. My question is about Starlink satellites and internet, and how do you think that might affect, for example, the availability for Bitcoin, the internet for individuals, and also how you think the restrictions, as far as like people being censored or cut off, is going to play a role in the Bitcoin world? Hopefully that's a fair question.
So in order to transmit Bitcoin, you need to send the transaction to the other person. You can use mesh network for that. You can use radio like Gotenna. Then you have to send the transaction to everybody else in order to confirm it and to mine it, which requires something even more than Starlink, because you require basically you have to fire up your transaction, not just to receive. So you need something more complex. But Starlink can help for initial block download. So when you want to synchronize a node, maybe you have some kind of mesh network, radio bridge, but you don't want to download all the blockchain to verify with that. So the Blockstream satellite or Starlink or stuff like that can actually help, even if you just have a receiving station. What is interesting, though, is that if you imagine a country which is completely cut off the internet. Let's imagine Ukraine cut off the internet because of some Russian attack. In that case, something like the Lightning Network among peers that are inside the same subnetwork will keep working, and the security assumption will remain the same as long as both parties are off the internet together. So no of the two can broadcast a previous transaction without the other knowing. So Lightning could actually survive a country being cut off the internet, but the main chain layer 1 settlement cannot. You need to be able to transmit upstream, not just to receive.
Anybody else want to answer it?
Also, if you look at the work of Blockstream and Dr. Adam Back, he's talked about using ham radios to transmit Bitcoin. You can do these things offline, as far as offline transactions, offline verifications. If you think about it, China's banned the internet. Now they're banning Bitcoin. So you sort of see the trend and you see the connection between the two. I'm sorry? Ban Bitcoin for the 50th time, exactly. And so what is important to understand is with satellites and other vectors like that, I think it shows not just the decentralization that Bitcoin has established at this point, but also the anti-fragility that exists in the system too. I mean, if anything was to prove sort of the resilience of Bitcoin, shutting off all the miners in China, I think, has been an example of that for a lot of reasons.
Just to add to that, I recently reported on Blockstream Satellite for Bitcoin magazine, and it's something to look into. You could go to blockstream.com/satellite, and it has some really interesting explainers, but basically it offers access to the Bitcoin blockchain 24/7 without the internet, so it allows for opportunities when there's maybe disruption to services, and it also prevents nodes from being isolated in cases like that. So I think there's a lot of innovation happening in that area.
Thank you.
All right, next question.
My name is Bernard. I wanted to ask you a question. You guys were saying about different countries where you can open these, and I'm European, I'm American, a dual citizenship, but I also was born in Venezuela, for good or bad. So I wanted to ask specifically, I don't know a lot about this. I'm kind of like a newcomer. There is a lot of action going in the Caribbean, and obviously there is islands and there is countries, right? So what is your feeling on that? I mean, I give you an example. Right now, if I need to make a choice, I can say, okay, I'm Venezuelan, I open whatever I want to open with Bitcoin as a Venezuelan, I can open it as an American, or I can open it as a Spaniard or European, okay, in that scenario. So you guys mentioned Africa and South America. It's not really appealing to me to go and have to be there, but it will be in the islands of the Caribbean, for example, all being Croatia. Okay, Croatia is in Europe. So can you expand on that besides Africa and South America, how you feel about these places?
Hey, so Bernard, also Venezuela. How you doing, bro? So look, the Bitcoin revolution is going to happen in countries that have the weakest fiat system, right? In countries that have strong fiat systems, they're going to try to incorporate central bank digital currencies to hold on to the power of the money printer. So the Bitcoin revolution is not going to be like other technological revolutions where the technology first starts in the US or starts in China. It's actually going to be in countries that need Bitcoin the most, right? So for example, Venezuela is a great example because people in Venezuela aren't buying Bitcoin to speculate like a lot of people in the West. People in Venezuela are buying Bitcoin to survive. They're buying Bitcoin out of necessity. So that same thing is going to happen worldwide. You're seeing the same thing in Nigeria that has also a currency that, experiencing some type of inflation, right? And it's estimated around 30% of the Nigerian population have opted out completely. So I suspect that same pattern is going to continue all over the world, right? So my thoughts.
Also, I would suggest to use as one of the parameters, not the only parameter, the strength of the Bitcoin community locally. Not just how the state is, but how many good Bitcoiners are there. That's especially at the beginning, network effect is very important. So if you go to Mexico, there are lots of Bitcoiners in different parts of Mexico. If you go to El Salvador, of course, now there is a Shelling point. If you go to Costa Rica also, there is one place with a lot of Bitcoiners. So some places are better than others because you can find friends then will help you to cash in, cash out, run your node and stuff like that.
Personally, I really like the Caribbean. Bahamas in particular is doing a lot when it comes to cryptocurrencies moving there. They're making really good laws that welcome us. And they've also had a huge history of trying to adopt Bitcoin at different levels. And I think that, the Caribbean is great. You should definitely come talk to me a little bit more about your
That's what I
particular
thought.
situation.
Yeah. Thank you. Other one. Thank you.
Yeah, once this mini bear market, and the longer it lasts, it really sets up Bitcoin nicely because Lightning Network is starting to become usable. And I know D++ is going to kill me for saying that, but she's not. She didn't hear that. And so once the price of Bitcoin goes back above 65 and starts hitting 70, 80,000, and everyone's going to realize that El Salvador did not do something stupid. They did something smart. Adoption is really going to take off. Like, price matters. So right now, everyone is still kind of laughing at Bitcoin because it's down from 65 and it's now at 40, even with this political environment between Canada and what's happening in Russia. But once that price of Bitcoin starts to go back up and it breaks that all-time high again, we're going to get 2017 again, only this time it's because of adoption, not because of ICOs.
So just from a financial perspective, here's a stat that should blow a lot of people away. Argentina has defaulted 4 times in my career. No 30-year bond has ever matured in Argentina. What a fucking joke, okay? Start by examining the credit quality of the country you're considering. And that's why the lower rated fiats will all disappear before G20. The funny thing is, Argentina's a G20. So we're starting to penetrate the top level of the largest economies of the world. Don't wait too long. Don't overthink it. Get your Bitcoin in any country, but the ones that will adopt it first are those that are serial defaulters. Imagine living in Argentina and owning a 30-year bond. What kind of fool are you? That's the reality.
Thank you.
This question is for Alex and one other speaker. If in the next 5 years, cold storage holding of Bitcoin becomes illegal or banned in the United States to the penalty of a 10-year imprisonment, what should our response be as U.S. citizens?
Boating accident. Yeah, I mean, 'cause that's something like that is going to happen. And this is where, I mean, I'm toying a lot because I made the fatal mistake of making myself public, as have other stupid people like Tone and
Yeah.
Giacomo and, the rest of us here, right? Basically everyone on the stage. So, I've been thinking very seriously about receding a little bit. And a lot of you actually have this advantage of anonymity in being able to recede and pretending like, I mean, whatever you need to do to lose it in a boating accident and have it such that that is not, you don't have something to be taken. So this is where all the KYC discussions become very important. But I was going to say something else to that. Actually, yeah. So
Self-custody is basically.
Yeah, so
more
self-custody is
specific,
obviously
just
important. But
self-custody.
yeah, I have this theory that over the next 100 years, we're probably going to end up, like, the total supply cap of Bitcoin is probably going to be 1 million, because we'll probably lose 90% of it along the way from people being capped, killed, poor, like, multi-sig, lost both my fucking keys. I handed it over to my wife and she didn't know what it was, so she put it in the washing machine. Like, whatever. Like, so I think we're going to lose a lot. So the question is, who's going to end up with the Bitcoin? And yeah, I mean, the more plausible deniability you have, the better. And under no circumstance do you sell or hand over what you have, because I guess the advantage we have, and this is kind of what Giacomo said, is like, it's very difficult and expensive to put 7 billion people into Guantanamo Bay, or even million people in Guantanamo Bay. So it's like we have the defense of of an asymmetry in the cost of attack on our side. And if anyone's ever heard of the OODA loop idea, it's obfuscation of what you hold is quite important. So yeah, build some KYC free stacks. CoinJoin now, while things are still cheap. Do what you can to lose your Bitcoin, so that you're not in a position later to be put under that threat. Did you tap on my shoulder?
I gave a talk titled "Come and Take It." So I think a couple things. I mean, that's good advice right there. But I think a couple other things. One, to the point, he said, can they put billions of people in prison? Probably not. The cost or the return on violence, if they had to go person by person by person, torture, gunpoint, give me your keys or you die, it's not going to happen. It was easy to seize gold because all the gold was already in the bank. But if they have to go house to house to house to house to house, torture every single person to get their keys, it's not going to happen. The other thing is if billions of people don't want it to be illegal, it shouldn't. And the other thing is that we have game theory playing out in real time. So we have El Salvador. So if the United States were to take that approach and we're going to go door to door to door and torture people to give up their keys and force you to 10 years in prison, which I don't see happening, you're not a tree. You could move and go somewhere where it's legal. That's another way. So game theory plays out. And then, this is an answer you're not going to like, but unfortunately, some people have to stand up. The pioneers take a few arrows in the back, and somebody's going to have to stand up and challenge that. And so, kind of what Alex said earlier, the remnant, who's going to stand and fight?
So, I actually kind of support what Mark is saying because to a degree of how Bitcoin continuously plays out on the world level, it's going to be hard for me to see a lot of people stabbing themselves in the foot, like just really saying we're going to lock everybody up for self-custody. Now, it possibly could. And along the same lines of Mark, you're just going to have to really decide on how you're going to move, whether you do move, whether you decide on standing down and fighting, because the longer you're in Bitcoin, the more the thought at the back of your mind you have that reality of knowing like this may be what it comes down to. So it's going to just have to be which I guess you're going to take the red or the blue pill on which one you're going to choose. But at the end of the day, if you sell it, then what did you give up? So that's all I could say about it.
So I would say, first and foremost, hold your keys now. If they make it illegal while your money's on an exchange,
You'll never get it out.
you have no options. You have 0 options whatsoever. That means you will never see it. You will never hold your keys. If you are holding them, then suddenly you are a nuisance. You are a problem for them. And the bigger and the more of us that are a problem, the better it is for us. Then in addition, I think we can take a lesson from the cypherpunks. The goal or our obligation in the face of an unjust law is to violate it. It's to violate it. Anybody who can is to just stand up, take your keys, and say, that's what I'm doing. Are you asking me whether or not, I'm not asking your permission whether or not I can own my money. Like, that is not even a part of the conversation. Like, is there a moral society that puts on the table whether or not you are allowed to own your money? For perfectly frank, that's fucking insane. And I don't want to be a part of that society. The cypherpunks, when encryption was announced by, I think it was the FBI, decided to unilaterally dictate that encryption code was munitions. It was in arms. So that if you ever printed in a book, or Adam Back printed it on a shirt and they put it in the email, in the remailer, they put it as a signature, like PGP Perl code. They did this because the FBI said that encryption was a munitions, and therefore you were violating a serious law in just communicating, just sending certain math problems and certain lines of code outside of the United States. So Victor, can't remember his name, but he set up a website. As soon as they made this announcement, he set up a website that said, become an international arms trafficker in 1 click. And they boasted it out. They've spread it out to the rest of the cypherpunks in the cryptography email list. And everybody went on the website, and there was just one button on the website that said, that allowed you, when you clicked on it, it took a block of PGP code, and they sent it from I think it was like a San Francisco server to one in Anguilla, and then you could publicly post your name that I just internationally arms trafficked, and it was a badge of honor, right? Like the cypherpunks did not sit down and just let that bullshit become the norm, and I think that is our responsibility. You know, who else is gonna do it if it's not us? So, yeah.
Yeah.
So a couple quick things. First, like what's going on? Like what's the status of this? So Congressman Warren Davidson he's trying to pass a bill that protects self-custody. We also have a state senator in Arizona. Her name is Wendy Rogers. She's also, she just introduced a bill into the Senate of Arizona, I doubt it will pass, to actually make Bitcoin legal tender. I suspect this is going to play out just like the marijuana industry. The marijuana industry is illegal on a federal level, but on the individual states have it legal. So it creates kind of this situation where like the feds technically could raid all these dispensaries in California, but California itself doesn't see it that way. So the federal government doesn't have the resources to go after all of those individuals opening up marijuana shops. And the last point I wanted to make was, at the end of the day, Bitcoin is speech. Okay, it's a form of speech, just text. You sign a transaction, it's just a bunch of numbers, right? Text. And the First Amendment specifically protects speech. So the way that I see this playing out, because the federal government has the most to lose, okay, they benefit the most from the power of the money printer. I suspect the federal government is going to fight self-custody tooth and nail. But I suspect individual states like Wyoming, like Florida, like Texas are going to protect their financial incentives, and that's just the reality of it.
To Nico's point, this is just similar to what I said about Switzerland and Lugano. You always have to remember who owns the money printer. It's not the case that the government of El Salvador didn't own any money printer, so they had nothing to lose. So to think that the Fed will give up monetary policy leverages, it's crazy, because okay, let's just go back to the federal budget of 1910. No, they will not accept that easily. But local states, they are still criminal organizations, but they have different incentives. So that's very, very interesting. And also, to Nico's point that Bitcoin is speech, how many of you knows about the number 0? You know about the number 0? Okay, it's a number. You now own the private key of an address that has seen more than 9 Bitcoin pass over it. So now you have to pay capital gain taxes or whatever. So consider that. I mean, we can fuck up so much the current jurisdiction about ownership with Bitcoin because it's completely different. If you know a number, you can move money. So it's really difficult to regulate in a consistent way. So we can play at the level as well.
You know, one of the things is that it can be pretty scary when it comes to hearing like 10 years in prison or things like that. I'm a former U.S. regulator, and so I've been on the government side, and I believe in this space a lot. In fact, I was actually just texting with Congressman Warren Davidson, and Tony wanted to make it to this conference, and he hopes maybe next year. But, you know, his bill, if you think about it, you have a sitting congressman that introduced a bill called Keep Your Coins Act. And I would take a look at it because it talks about self-custody and peer-to-peer transactions. And if you think about it, it's the KYC bill. Think about a congressman actually poking fun a little bit at all of this that's about surveillance. And what I think we have to start to think about is, why are we always on the defensive? Why is it always they're after us? That it's assumed that they have to surveil all our transactions. And if you look at the right to privacy in this country and rule of law all the way back to Brandeis, it doesn't just talk about tangible goods that you hold. It talks about intangible goods. That's what Brandeis talked about in his famous Brandeis-Warren right to privacy. What's in your mind, poetry, whatever it is, the code, Bitcoin. These are things that we're allowed to hold in our minds, because there are things that governments can do, and they do it every day. Lock up people, take away your possessions, take away your freedom. But they can't take away this kind of privacy. And I think it's important to try to contact your politicians. I know a lot of people don't like government here, but reach out and support this kind of a bill, because that's where there can be this kind of last stand against what's a real push, unfortunately, toward that direction of just trying to get rid of the self-custody concept.
Awesome.
I just wanted to finish up the the cypherpunk thing is, you know, the cypherpunks were tiny in the late 90s when this all happened. And they were, you know, underfunded, and they were playing this fight by themselves. You know, this was not like a popular culture thing, right? They won. They won. They took the FBI to court, and they won. If they can win at the size that they were, when nobody knew who the hell any of them were and they didn't seem to matter, how can we, orders of magnitude larger, like with the philosophy in place, knowing what our rights are and knowing and taking that, not waiting for them to give us permission, but doing it now, how could we not win this time?
Awesome. All right, thank you so much. Wow, what final round of applause for all the speakers. Thank you so much for sticking around. It's been 2 long days. It's been absolutely incredible. And yeah, I think I still have 2 more of these to give away, so I have to pick someone. So it's like if you want one of these paintings, I think I have one over there on the corner, and there's one more over there. So come see me, because I know I owe one to a couple of people. And you want it? You gonna take it to Miami with you? All right, I think I have to give it to a speaker. All right. I know. A little more. I know you guys have one, right? I have to get. Okay. Well. Okay. You're gonna get one. All right. I have to get Derek. I have to give it to a speaker. If you're gonna take it to Miami. All right. We have the after party in 2 hours. It's at the place on 7th. Same place as the poker game. It's also on the website. I don't know what other announcements I have to make right now, but yeah, apparently it's really cold out. I have not been outside all day. It was so nice on Thursday when we played poker there, and we were gonna do Scammy's outdoors. We may still do that, so bring a jacket. But we do have the Scammy Awards there. Any other announcements I need to make, guys?
Yeah, everyone give Tone a hand.
Thank you. Again, shout out to the organizers, not just Tone, Muzzman, and so many others. X-Frog, that was he was incredible doing all the tech, all the volunteers, of course our sponsors that allow this event not to lose a ridiculous amount of money. All right, thank you so much.